The night market was almost empty when the human walked through the broken stalls. Lanterns flickered in the cold wind, and the smell of spoiled fruit mixed with smoke from nearby fires. He was about to turn back when he noticed a shape lying on the cracked stone floor. It was not just any passerby. It was a woman, her skin pale silver, her hair tangled, her clothes torn as if she had been dragged through the dirt. She was not human. She was alien. He paused, unsure if she was alive. The crowd around her did not stop. Some aliens glanced, then turned away. Others whispered and laughed, calling her cursed, broken, and worthless. Their voices dripped with cruelty. The human pushed forward, crouched beside her, and saw her trembling hands clutching her stomach. Her breath came in short gasps, as if she was fighting both pain and shame. When he tried to lift her head, her glowing eyes opened slightly, full of fear and despair. Her lips moved, and in a weak, broken voice she whispered, "Make me your personal slave, human. Please." The words froze him. He thought he misheard. A stranger, an alien woman, begging for slavery? Her voice cracked again, repeating the same desperate plea. The human felt every eye on him now. The crowd smirked, waiting to see what he would do. To them, she was nothing more than a discarded outcast. To him, she was a mystery wrapped in suffering. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Why would you say that?" he asked, but she only shivered and clutched at his sleeve like a drowning person reaching for air. Her body shook, and he realized she could collapse fully at any moment. Against the mocking laughter of those watching, he pulled her up into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, fragile like glass, but burning with fever. The aliens nearby muttered in disgust. "Let the human take her. She's not one of us anymore." Another spat on the ground. "Cursed blood, shameful creature." Their words carried hatred, and yet no one tried to stop him. It was as if she was already dead to them. The human carried her out of the market, his boots echoing against the stone. Every step felt heavier, not because of her weight, but because of the stares that followed. The woman stirred faintly in his arms, whispering the same words again, "Your slave, only your slave." He shook his head in disbelief, not knowing if she was delirious or truly meant it. He brought her into a narrow alley where the lanterns could not reach. Placing her gently against a wall, he checked her injuries. Her arms were bruised, her sides swollen, as though someone had beaten her. Her breath wheezed, and her lips were cracked. He searched his bag for water, pressing it to her lips. She drank greedily, but tears slipped down her face as she did. "Why?" he asked again, his voice low. "Why would you want to be a slave?" Her glowing eyes met his for a second before falling away in shame. She did not answer, but her hands moved to his boots as if trying to kneel even though her body was broken. He stopped her, holding her wrists gently. She flinched at his touch, expecting pain, but he gave none. A sound echoed at the far end of the alley, footsteps, slow and heavy. The human's instincts sharpened. He pressed her closer to the wall, scanning the shadows. A group of tall figures passed by, armored in dark plates, their glowing weapons humming faintly. They did not look his way, but he felt the woman tense violently, her breath catching. She buried her face against his chest, whispering a single word he could barely hear. "Hunters." He waited until the armored figures were gone. Only then did she relax slightly, though her trembling did not stop. He could feel her fear like a pulse. Whoever those hunters were, they were searching for her, and she was terrified of being found. The human stared down at her, this alien who begged for chains instead of freedom, who would rather serve than be seen. He did not understand her shame, but he could see her pain. The market had left her for dead, the crowd mocking her, and now hunters stalked the night. Her body was weak, her spirit crushed, but her eyes still carried a spark that had not yet died. He made a choice then. He lifted her again, holding her close despite her protests. She whispered the word slave once more, as if afraid he would let her go if she did not bind herself to him somehow. But he ignored her plea. He would not treat her like a slave. Not tonight of her. The streets were silent except for his footsteps, the city around them dark and dangerous. He did not know who she was, why she had fallen so low, or why enemies hunted her. But one thing was certain. The moment she collapsed before him, his path had changed. Somewhere in the shadows, unseen eyes still followed, and the night had only just begun. The human set her down inside an abandoned storage room, the door creaking shut behind him. Dust hung in the air, and broken crates lay scattered on the floor. He tore strips of cloth from one of the old sacks and wrapped them around her wounds, careful not to press too hard. Her skin was fever hot, and her breaths came shallow and fast. She tried to push his hands away, whispering again that she was not worth his trouble, but her voice was weak, trembling with shame. "You should let me die," she murmured, her glowing eyes unfocused. "My life has no value. My only worth is to serve." The human's jaw tightened. "You're not a slave. Stop saying that." His words were sharp, but she did not flinch from his tone. Instead, she lowered her gaze to the floor as if she had been trained to accept punishment. He realized then that this was not only desperation, it was something forced deep into her mind. The silence of the room pressed heavily between them until she finally spoke again. "Do you know why they left me in the market? Why they spat at me and called me cursed?" Her voice cracked, each word like a stone she could barely lift. "I was born into a noble caste. My family once had power, honor. But when the truth of me was revealed, they cast me out. They said I brought shame on all of them." He leaned closer, waiting for her to explain, but she hesitated as if the very memory burned. "My blood is not clean. My gift, they say it is a curse. I heal too fast, live too long. To them, that is unnatural. To them, I am unworthy of anything but chains. No one would take me as a mate. No one would stand beside me. So I thought, perhaps as a slave, I could at least exist." Her words echoed like a wound torn open. The human stared at her, this woman who spoke of her life as if it was already over. He could see the fire beneath her shame, buried so deep she no longer believed it belonged to her. Yet he could not ignore the way her hands shook, or the way she pressed her forehead to the floor as though begging him to bind her. Before he could answer, a sharp noise outside made them both freeze. The sound of boots against stone, deliberate and close. She inhaled sharply and gripped his sleeve. Her voice fell to a whisper. "They are looking for me." He held his breath, listening as the footsteps passed slowly by the door. Harsh voices spoke in a language he barely understood, but he caught the words traitor and erased. She trembled violently, pulling herself against the wall, her eyes full of terror. The hunters were not far, and they were not finished searching. When the sound faded, she collapsed again, pressing her face into her hands. "They won't stop until I am gone. That is why I offered myself to you. Better a slave to a human than a corpse in their hands." Her voice cracked into a sob she tried to choke back. The human crouched beside her, forcing her to lift her head. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "You're not my slave. You're not their shame. You are alive. That means you have a choice." Her lips parted as if she wanted to argue, but no words came. She stared at him as though he had spoken something impossible, something no one had ever dared to tell her. For the first time, her eyes carried more than despair. There was a flicker, tiny, fragile, of hope. But outside, the sound of armor shifted again, closer this time. The hunters were circling. The human tightened his grip on the broken knife he carried, his mind racing. He knew the truth now. She was more than she appeared, more dangerous to herself than anyone else. And if he chose to stay, he would be hunted too. Still, when she whispered once more, "Please, don't leave me," he realized the decision had already been made. The fire in the small brazier crackled weakly, casting long shadows across the walls. The human sat awake, knife in hand, while the alien woman lay curled under the ragged blanket he had given her. Her breathing was uneven, caught between exhaustion and fear. Every few moments she stirred as if dreaming of pursuit, whispering fragments of words in her broken voice. He knew she was not safe, not even here. The sound came first as a faint scrape of metal against stone. His body stiffened. Outside, the night was too still, too heavy. Then came the footsteps, slow, measured, heavy boots echoing closer and closer. The woman jolted upright, her wide glowing eyes locking onto him with panic. She did not need to speak. He could already feel her fear spreading like ice in his chest. "They've found me," she whispered, clutching his arm with surprising strength for someone so weak. Her trembling hand pointed toward the door. "If you fight, you'll die. If they see me alive, they'll burn us both." The human's grip on his knife tightened. "Then we don't let them see." He moved silently to the side of the door, pressing his back against the cold wall. The woman tried to rise, but her body betrayed her, her legs buckling beneath her. She sank to her knees, tears of frustration in her eyes. I should have died already, she muttered, her voice breaking. You should leave me before they... A sudden bang cut her words short. The door shook under the weight of a heavy fist. The brazier flame quivered as if the room itself was holding its breath. Another blow followed, louder, angrier. The human could see the wood splintering. He raised the knife, knowing it was nothing against soldiers clad in armored plates, but it was all he had. When the door burst open, the knights spilled inside, along with 3 towering figures. Their faces were hidden beneath helmets, their weapons glowing with humming energy. The first stepped forward, scanning the room with eyes that burned red from behind his visor. His voice was low, guttural. She's here. The traitor's scent lingers. The woman collapsed against the wall, pressing her hands to her mouth as if to hide her very breath. The human stepped forward, knife raised, his stance steady, though his heart pounded in his ears. The armored figure tilted his head at the sight of him, a human standing where no human should. Leave now, the soldier growled. This does not concern your kind. Walk away, and we forget you were ever here. The human's voice was steady when he answered, She's under my protection. A laugh rumbled from the soldier's chest, sharp and cruel. Protection? From you? She is nothing. Even her own kind cast her away. What is she to you, human? The woman shook her head desperately, her eyes begging him not to answer, not to risk himself for her. But he did not look away. She's someone they fear. That means she's not nothing. The soldier's laughter died. He raised his weapon. In the instant before the energy bolt fired, the human lunged forward. His knife flashed, striking the weapon's barrel and deflecting its aim. The blast tore into the wall, scorching stone and sending sparks across the room. Chaos erupted. The woman cried out as the second soldier moved toward her. She tried to crawl away, but her body was too weak. The human slammed into the soldier, knife plunging into the seam of his armor. Sparks and blood sprayed as the alien roared in pain. The human wrenched the weapon from his grip and swung it wildly, striking the third before the blade shattered. The fight was brutal, uneven. Armor against flesh, steel against bone. The human's arms ached, blood dripping from cuts on his face and hands. Yet every time he faltered, he heard her voice, trembling but alive, calling his name. He pushed harder, driving one enemy to the ground, another staggering back. The last soldier aimed his weapon at the alien woman, who pressed herself against the wall, too weak to move. In a desperate rush, the human threw himself between them. The blast struck his shoulder, searing pain ripping through him. He fell to one knee, gasping, but he did not let go of the broken weapon in his hand. With one final strike, he drove it upward into the soldier's throat. The armored body fell, lifeless, to the ground. The room fell silent again, the brazier's flame flickering weakly as smoke and the stench of blood filled the air. The human's chest heaved with every breath, his shoulder burning from the wound. He turned to her, and for the first time she looked at him not with shame, but with something close to awe. You fought for me, she whispered, tears streaking her face. Even knowing what I am, you fought. He sat down heavily against the wall, blood running down his arm. His voice was hoarse but steady. If they fear you this much, then you're not worthless, and I won't let them erase you. In her silence, the air shifted. The hunters were gone, but more would come. And now she knew this human was not like the rest. The human's arm throbbed from the wound, but he forced himself to stay awake. The bodies of the hunters lay where they had fallen, their armor cracked, their blood seeping into the dirt floor. The alien woman sat across from him, her hands trembling as she reached toward his injured shoulder. He expected her to falter, but when her palms pressed against the burn, something impossible happened. The pain dulled. The angry flesh began to knit together before his eyes, the date rate, the seared skin smoothing as if the wound had never been there. He pulled back in shock, staring at her glowing hands. She quickly hid them against her chest, shame flooding her face. This is why they call me cursed, she whispered. This is why my own people threw me out. I cannot bleed like them. I cannot break like them. They say I was touched by death itself. I should not exist. The human flexed his arms, still in disbelief. You call this a curse? You just saved my life. Her eyes dropped to the floor, her voice low and hollow. Every time I heal, they fear me more. They whisper that I will outlive them all, that I will bring ruin. My bloodline was erased because of me. Families spit at my name. Even if I begged to crawl at their feet, they would not take me back." He leaned closer, his voice firm. "They fear you because you're stronger than them. That doesn't make you cursed. It makes you dangerous to their lies." She flinched at the word strong, shaking her head. "No, I am nothing. I only live because you carry me. That is why I beg to be your slave. If I belong to you, then maybe I am safe." The human stared at her, seeing more than her shame now. Beneath the cracked shell of her words there was something hidden, power she could not accept, a truth she had been forced to bury. He saw how her hands clenched against her chest, not in fear of him, but in fear of herself. Before he could speak again, a faint sound drifted from outside, the howl of horns echoing across the night sky. She stiffened, her face paling. "More will come," she said. "They never send only 3. The rest will follow their trail. They will find us, and they will not stop." He rose to his feet, ignoring the dull ache in his arm. "Then we move before they arrive." She shook her head, her eyes wide with dread. "You don't understand. They don't just hunt me. They burn everything I touch. If you stay, they will mark you too. You will be hunted until you are ash." He walked to her side and helped her stand. Her legs were weak, but his grip steadied her. "Then let them come. I don't care what mark they put on me. I've seen what you can do. You're not a curse. You're proof their fear is real." Her lips parted, but no answer came. For the first time, she looked at him not as a master, not as someone to own her, but as someone who believed in her when she could not. Together, they stepped into the cold night. The sky burned faintly red on the horizon, the sound of horns still carrying in the distance. She leaned against him, her voice a whisper almost lost to the wind. "If they find out what I am, they will not just kill me. They will try to chain me again, and chains, I cannot endure them a second time." The human looked down at her, his jaw set. "Then we break every chain before they touch you." Her breath caught, and something strange flickered in her eyes. Not just fear, but a spark of something buried deep, a strength she had long forgotten she possessed. For the first time in her broken life, she wondered if she could be more than the shame her people named her. The road stretched into silence, broken only by the crunch of the human's boots and the uneven steps of the woman leaning against him. Her silver skin at the pale light of dawn, and though her body still trembled, her eyes stayed fixed on the horizon, as if searching for something that could not be seen. He guided her into the shelter of an old ruin, its stone arches half collapsed, vines curling across the walls. She sank down against the cold stone, her breath ragged, her gaze distant. "You wonder why I heal," she finally said, her voice low, carrying the weight of secrets buried too long. "It is not because I was touched by death. That is the story they spread. The truth is older." He crouched beside her, waiting. Her hands clenched tightly in her lap before she continued. "Long before my people built their cities, before they crowned their kings, there was a prophecy written in the stars. It spoke of a bloodline that would not fade, of a union with a stranger who came from beyond our skies. They feared it. They feared it because it promised change, an end to their thrones, their power. And when they saw me heal, when they saw my blood refuse to die, they whispered that I was the sign." The human felt a chill run down his spine. "A prophecy about humans?" Her eyes lifted to his, glowing faintly in the dim light. "Yes, the words say the stranger would not be of our world. And when you carried me, when you fought for me, I thought of those words. I thought maybe." Her voice broke, shame flooding back over her face. "But I am nothing. My family cast me into the dirt. I beg to be owned because I cannot believe I am meant for more." He reached for her chin, tilting her face up so she could not look away. "They lied to you because they were afraid. That doesn't make the prophecy false. It makes it dangerous to them. And if it's real, then maybe meeting me wasn't chance." Her lips parted as if to argue, but the sound of movement outside the ruin cut her words short. Heavy steps, more than before, drawing closer. She grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his skin. "They've tracked us again. We cannot fight so many. You don't understand. The more I survive, the more certain they become that I am the one they fear. They'll tear apart anyone near me just to end what I might become." The human's hand tightened around the hilt of his blade. "Then let them come. If they fear you so much, it's because they know they can't stop you forever." Her breath shook, tears welling in her eyes. "You speak as though I have strength. But I am still broken. My power is nothing but a wound they've cursed me with. If I reveal it fully, they will spread my name across the stars, and hunters will never stop. You'll be marked too, hunted until your bones are ash." He knelt before her, close enough that she could see the fire in his eyes. "Then we make them afraid of more than your name. We make them afraid of both of us." Something in her cracked at his words. She pressed her hand against her heart, whispering as if to herself, "All my life, I thought chains were the only way to survive. But now, I don't want chains. I don't want to kneel. I want to stand." The human offered his hand. For a long moment she stared at it, her chest rising and falling with a storm of fear and longing. Then, slowly trembling, she placed her hand in his. The air between them seemed to shift, as though the ruin itself felt the choice being made. Outside, the hunter's horns echoed once more, louder, closer. She gripped his hand tighter, her eyes burning not with shame, but with something fierce, something reborn. The prophecy was no longer just a whisper. It was alive in the space between them. The horns faded into silence, but the dread they carried lingered like smoke in the woman's chest. She stood at the broken arch of the ruin, her silver hair tangled in the wind, her glowing eyes staring at the horizon where the hunters would soon appear. The human moved to her side, his blade at his hip, the wound in his shoulder long gone thanks to her touch. She could feel his presence steady behind her, unshaken, as though no army could turn him away. Her hands trembled as she clenched them into fists. "If I fight, they will see me for what I am," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "They will know the cursed child still lives, and when they know, the hunt will never end." The human's voice was low, firm. "If you don't fight, we both die here." She turned to him, eyes glistening with fear. "You don't understand the weight of my blood. If I unleash what I carry, there is no turning back. My people will hunt me across every world, and you, because you stand beside me, you will be hunted too. Do you truly want that fate?" He stepped closer, the firelight in his gaze unwavering. "I chose the moment I picked you up from that market floor. I'll choose again now. I don't care about their fate for me. I care about yours." Her lips trembled, and she wanted to fall to her knees again, to beg for chains, for something that felt safe, but the words would not come. Instead, her chest burned with something new, anger. Not at him, but at the voices of her past, the ones that spat her name like filth, the ones that chained her spirit until she could not lift her head. She realized she hated them more than she feared them. The sound of marching feet grew louder. Dozens now, their armor clattering like storm waves against stone. She closed her eyes, feeling the old instinct to shrink, to hide, to beg for mercy. But when she opened them again, the human was there, steady and unyielding, and for the first time she wanted to stand beside someone, not beneath them. The first hunter appeared through the trees, his weapon glowing in the dark. He raised it at once when he saw her, shouting to the others. The air trembled with the heat of charging energy. The woman drew in a breath, her body tense. She looked at the human once more, as if asking silently for permission to be herself. He gave a single nod. The ground shuddered when she moved. Light burst from her skin like fire tearing through shadow, her wounds sealing, her body lifting with strength she had always feared to show. Her voice rang out, no longer trembling, but sharp as steel. "I will not kneel again." The hunters faltered, their formation breaking for the first time. She raised her hand, and the blast of power tore through the first line, throwing armored bodies into the trees. Their weapons fired, bolts of burning energy cutting through the air, but she stood tall, shielding the human at her side. Each shot that struck her body healed in moments, her flesh knitting as fast as it broke. The human fought at her side, his blade flashing in the firelight, cutting down those who drew too close. They were two against many, yet the field burned with chaos, the hunters shouting in panic. For every wound they dealt her, she rose stronger, her voice growing louder, her presence like a storm unchained. When the last soldier staggered forward, his weapon trembling in his hands, she struck him down with a wave of light that left nothing but silence behind. Her chest heaved, her skin glowing faintly, her hands still pulsing with power. She looked at them in disbelief, as though seeing herself for the first time. The human stood beside her, blood on his blade, his breath heavy but his eyes steady on her. She met his gaze, tears welling in her glowing eyes. You gave me a choice, she whispered, voice breaking, and I chose to fight, not as a slave, not as a curse, but as myself. The night was quiet now, but in the distance she could already feel it, the ripple of fear spreading. Her name would travel across the stars once more, not as shame, but as defiance. The battlefield was littered with broken armor and scorched earth, smoke rising into the night sky. The woman stood trembling in the silence, her body glowing faintly from the power she had unleashed. Her chest rose and fell quickly, not from weakness, but from the weight of what she had done. The human wiped his blade clean on a fallen soldier's cloak, his eyes never leaving her. She looked at him as if searching for judgment, waiting for him to see her as the cursed thing her people named her. But he only nodded once, calm and steady, as though what he saw was not a monster but someone reborn. Her hands shook as she raised them, staring at her own skin where moments ago bolts of burning energy had struck. They will know now, she whispered. Every survivor will tell them the cursed one lives. My people will hunt me across worlds. They will send armies. They will never let me breathe free. The human stepped closer, his voice quiet but carrying more weight than the horns that had echoed hours before. Then let them send their armies. You don't face them alone anymore. She bit her lip, her eyes filling with tears. All her life she had been cast down, spit on, broken by words that stripped her of worth. Yet here was a man from another world, a stranger who should have walked away, telling her she was not alone. The word slave burned on her tongue, but when she tried to say it, it would not leave her lips. Instead, what came was softer, trembling, but true. Then what am I to you? The human looked at her, his jaw set. Not my slave, my equal. Her breath caught, and she felt something inside her shift, as if the chains she had worn all her life were snapping one by one. She lowered her head, but not in shame, only to hide the tears that fell onto the ash at her feet. She had begged to be owned, thinking it was the only way to survive. But now she had chosen something greater. The night wind carried the smell of smoke and blood, but beneath it a new sound rose, the call of more horns in the far distance. Reinforcements were coming, countless more than the few they had faced. She turned toward the horizon, her fear pressing back into her chest. They won't stop. Even if we run, they will follow. The human rested a hand on her shoulder, steadying her trembling frame. Then we don't run. We make them afraid to follow. For the first time in years, she did not feel like prey. Standing beside him, she felt the storm in her blood as strength, not shame. She lifted her chin, her glowing eyes burning with resolve. If they call me cursed, then let them. If they call me traitor, let them, but I will not kneel again. Together they stepped forward, the ruin behind them collapsing in silence. The prophecy she had once feared now hung between them, alive in every step they took. The cursed woman was no longer begging for chains. She walked as a warrior beside the human who had refused to abandon her, their bond stronger than the fear of any army. And across the stars, her enemies would soon learn that the name they tried to erase was rising again, not in shame, but in fire.